welcome to Table Talk. I'm Greg Perez, your host, and today I have a special guest, and it's Greg Parker. He's our Canby City Councilman. Greg, how are you doing today?
It's wonderful to be here with you and your table.
My table? Yeah, it's full of talk too. Believe me, it's full of talk today. So today, I think you said you wanted to cover, you tell me, what did we want to kind of go over? The things that are going on in Canby in the way of building?
Some of the trends that are starting to emerge that we're seeing. We are having a continuation of Canby being a bedroom community, a commuter community, that people complain about increasing traffic, but the traffic study that we just completed shows that really the only congestions we're facing are in the morning, when this town of 16,000 people has 8,000 of its people commuting out to Washington and Multnomah counties for high-paying jobs, and 4,000 to 6,000 people coming into Canby who live elsewhere around the region. And so you have this great washing of people going in two directions, 8,000 this direction, 4,000 in this direction. And I think a lot of people are usually surprised when they hear that only 15% of the people who live in Canby work in Canby. Now, part of it is that we've got a mismatch between the type of jobs that are in Canby and the type of houses that are in Canby. Before I came down here today, I was on the phone with Gina Hosford and talking to her about real estate trends.
How are the houses setting, or are they setting?
Well, it's a story that we've heard before, that the houses that are being built, for example, next to Ackerman Middle School, over in that quadrant of town, are being built and constructed for $425,000 to $475,000. That seems to be the place that the houses are being built right now. What Gina says is that the need right now is for less than that, because nobody who is a first-time home buyer has the revenue, has the income to let them get into a $400,000 house. And the houses that they can get into are very few. This morning I was looking online at the types of houses, and there was one 160, one 235, and then we quickly got into the 300s. So I think that's what Gina was talking about, that right now the market has this sweet spot that people are trying to purchase, and that's ironically lower than what the houses that are being constructed. So what that means is that the people who could afford the houses in Canby aren't the people who live in Canby, unless they're going to step up. Mm-hmm. But more likely it's people who have already built up equity in the Portland metro area. So my prediction is that much of the new people that will be coming into Canby will be affluent people who are in careers in Portland and statistically drive, well, at the last census it said they drove 32 miles in order to get here.
You know, I think in some of the controversy too of the number of cars and traffic through Canby, people are like creatures of habit. Yeah. They find their ways through town, which is the quickest for them to get from one point to another point, the other point being I-5. So Territorial drew them through, and then Birch, is it Birch?
Birch was a street that
nobody traveled on.
That was until Google Maps
put it on the map,
said here is the shortest route. And the neighborhood came to the council and said, would you put speed bumps in? Would you do something? And so working in conjunction with the Canby Fire Department, Canby Police Department, emergency responders, we came up with a new type for Canby of speed bump. And Bob Backstrom, who's the chair of the Traffic Safety Commission, told me last time I talked to him last month, said that this has reduced the speed. He says the number of cars going through is about the same, but they're slower. And he says when they're slower, they don't make as much noise. So he says the volume, auditory volume, has dropped. So he's happy.
I am the individual that I don't hold back, I don't sugarcoat anything, and I call bullshit on speed bumps in Canby. I hope that is the initial and the last step of putting any speed bumps in Canby. Sometimes we have to work together, and it's not good for some vehicles. Fire department, for instance. Okay.
They signed off, although they did sign off on
I
this
know
design.
that, but you know it's good to work together.
Yeah.
Okay. But myself, this is table talk. I'm going to call it like I see and how I feel.
And what the council did was respond to citizen request. Mm-hmm. You know, there's really very little in government out there that you see, including taxes, including regulations, business license, and so on, that weren't initially the ideas of citizens coming to us and saying we want these things.
Right.
And the speed bumps, again, for a number of us, this isn't really a road we had gone down before. And, but we didn't really have any other tools to help the neighborhood with. And so this was the compromise.
I beg to differ on that one. Traffic circle, roundabouts.
Right. That would involve us condemning private property.
If they would take that instead of speed bumps, we don't know because we didn't go that route.
That's not what the citizens ask us.
Yeah.
Nobody came to us and say, would you chop a third of my front yard off in order to have a roundabout?
Well, then we have easement too. So whatever the city owns or the utilities own.
It would be 10 feet, but that's not enough. Roundabout, I love roundabouts. I go to Bend and think it's marvelous. But they do take up some real estate. Mm-hmm. And if you try and most of the roundabouts in Bend are put into intersections that are newer and wider. The problem with roundabouts in urban areas that have historically sized streets is that in order to put them in, you're going to have to take out some property, if not houses. For example, a stoplight now is going in at Ivy and Territorial, that three-way stop, the T-bone there. And somebody said, well, why don't you put in a roundabout? But we would have had to have purchased property on 360 degrees, replaced a utility pole, and the cost just shot out. And
what about Territorial and the road going to the country club?
There has been no request and no survey on that. So
Yeah. You know, and eventually that whole area is going to go and be full of homes. So I don't see us looking ahead, maybe not in our lifetimes, but that's going to be solid full of homes.
It is solid. It will be solid homes up to the city limits and to the urban growth boundary.
Right.
And
But once that is encompassed in, because we're running out of places to build homes.
on that side of town.
Right.
Otherwise, the growth will continue to head out east as is planned.
Isn't that industrial?
Only on the northern side of it. On the southern side, that is all zoned for residential. Those are the houses, the Dinsmore Estates and that sort
Right.
of thing that is being built out that way. We're providing services, lift station for our sewers and that sort of thing to accommodate that growth. I think this leads us to one of my favorite questions, which is why are you city councilors destroying this city by allowing it to grow so fast?
There's a reason why, and it's not the city council. Go ahead and tell us.
Well, we don't have any tools. In fact, we now are minus a tool, which is the annexation process.
That's the big one.
That the legislature, to the best of my understanding, decided that they didn't want to have the annexation law get in the way of affordable or more affordable housing.
Have we seen it?
And it's a little too early. It's only been 3 years since the law has passed, taking away voter referrals of annexations, which would have been a way for citizens to slow down growth. But that doesn't exist anymore. If you come in and you meet the requirements with your land of it being in the urban growth area, you have a plan on how to service it and pay the system development fees and so on, you're guaranteed to have that property come in. So we don't seem to have a legal, so the question is whether you buy it or not. You know, some people say, well, you should figure out something. But if in fact we have to start with the premise that we can't, that a landowner is able to do what is legal with their property, that the city can't come in and say, no, you can't.
Let me stop right there. Let me show you something what we're looking at right now. New development. This is on 13th and Sequoia. There's 135 homes going in there, and I understand on one side is where the new pump station is being developed.
Correct.
To take care of the overflow and the no grade that they have to reach the main line. It's inevitable. Is it affordable housing? It depends on what the definition is of affordable housing and how people take it out of context.
Well, affordable housing is housing that whose mortgage is no greater than 1/3 of your income.
Right.
So,
And that is, let me ask you a question on that one. I don't mean to interrupt, but how old is that formula? Is that something new they've always gone by, or?
yeah, yes, it is.
Is it new?
It's an old formula.
It's an old formula.
And some people have suggested ratcheting it up, and in fact, from a practical standpoint, we are seeing people who are paying up to half of their income towards their housing. And when we were growing up, the term was house poor.
Right.
You know, that you were pouring all of your money. It's not a new concept.
Right.
Of purchasing a house as large as you can, or maybe even greater than you can. But I think the point is that right now I do not see any formula, legal formula, that is politically acceptable, that allows us to encourage housing other than market value. And right now that's $1.75, $2.25 a square foot. You can make less expensive places by making them smaller, by making them taller, but you have an immutable formula of how much it costs to get a lot, to buy a lot of land, and I was told by Jamie Netter of Netter Construction that lots are going for, say, $135.
And that's minimum.
And so
That's minimum, $135.
You know,
That's $135,000.
When I moved to Canby over 20 years ago, I bought a house, 2,300 square foot house, for $200,000. And nowadays, that house is getting close to being worth $400,000. But it's a gentrification. I mean, this is part of, we're facing global economics here. We are facing the drought in the Southwest, where we have what's called water refugees. And people are saying, I'm tired of living in Texas. I am tired of not being able to water my front yard. I'm moving someplace where they have water.
They're getting water as we speak.
And so you have that happening. You also have the fact that Portland has a reputation as being one of the most creative and livable cities in the country. And of course, here's the irony. For those of us who have been here 40 years, even harder for people who've been here, say, 70 years living in this state. They're saying that, well, this isn't the Portland, this isn't the Oregon I knew. We both have friends that have to commute to Portland.
Yes.
And they're talking about how each year it is getting more and more difficult.
Our friend that has a business in Portland, it drives him crazy to drive to work. They were going to purchase a home, but if you're going to pay $600,000-$700,000 for an old remnant of a home, then you got to pour another $300,000 to bring it up. Might as well stay right where you're at.
Right, and I was talking to a real estate agent about that very fact today. And things are fluid, things are changing. The economy is changing. There are more people able to work from home.
Right. The dynamics of the workforce is changed.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, let me change the topic here, as long as we're talking about megatrends, into some of the things that I learned at the National Main Street Conference that I just got back from, that studies megatrends in the country. And it's so funny, Greg, when you go to a seminar and they're telling you about national trends and it's happening right here in Canby. One of them is that the future of downtowns is not going to be retail. That retail space, square footage space, which in Canby is at Portland rates, $2 a square foot.
Oh, I know it.
That it's the only way you can generate that type of revenue is with a restaurant, a bar, a service, nail salon, hair salon, services that you cannot buy online. And here's the boogeyman of online stuff. Here's this year's statistics on online purchasing. That the total amount of online purchasing nationally is about 8 to 10% of total retail spent. Now that doesn't sound a lot, but here's one thing, that if you were to go to any of the retail places in town and say, is your profit margin greater than 8%? It's usually not. And retailers have lost that profit margin.
Right.
The other thing, and as a kid growing up, I always used to hear that, well, retailers make most of their money at Christmas. At Christmas time, the online purchase goes from 10% to 40%. So you not only have an increase in percentage, but the size with which things are purchased. So there's going to be a change, and in fact, it happened here in Canby's downtown, just on the other side of this block where we're taping this, where you had Pudding River, a business that we loved going to, a sweet wine shop, great to hang out.
Yes, it was.
And they made a business decision that it would be more profitable to move into a manufacturing and wholesaling.
On their own property.
Rather than doing retail.
Right.
Because there's greater profit. The retail takes a lot of money to staff up and operate. So
you got to wait for somebody to knock and come in.
So right, and so in its place went a service, a law firm, and then we also had a Dr. Dave Dewar is moving into on First Avenue.
Right.
Now, for 50 years, the philosophy of Main Street is to try and have a mix of retail and services. And what we were told at the conference is that the future of downtowns is going to be residential, that people are going to live downtown, that they want bars, they want services, they want things that you cannot get online, a shoe repair shop, a massage, chiropractor, medical. These are sort of things that you can't get from Amazon. And bars and restaurants. And in fact, they've even drilled down to millennials, which are the most to me, the most interesting element of this whole economy that we're going to be seeing. That millennials are facing the housing situation that we just talked about, where they're going to be living in apartments, not houses, apartments, of 700 square feet or less.
Like the Bay Area.
And in 700 square feet, you don't have a lot of room for lamps, for tables. If you don't have a table, you don't have a table book. And so consumption among millennials is crashing.
Right.
And then you take a look at boomers like you and me. 3 years ago, I downsized from a 2,200 square foot house to a 900 square foot duplex. So now I have plenty of stuff. In fact, I've got more stuff than I have room for it.
So you're living life as a millennial.
And that's the irony, is that millennials and boomers share in, they don't want to mow lawns. That they would rather spend their discretionary money not on things, but on experiences. In fact, that was almost a theme this year of coming out of the mega trends, was that people, consumers, don't want to spend money on events where you sit and get. You want to have an experience, an interactive experience. And with millennials, it's they want to walk from their house to a bar, sit outside with their dog, and enjoy their social media. And
entirely different from our lives.
And that is the vision of an economic future. And for those who either say, I've got a business, I want to do it a little different, or I don't believe that, or that's a future I don't want, I'd say it reminds me of the time in American history where the Pony Express hired some of the best, they didn't know what we call them today, logistics. Mm-hmm. But figuring out exactly where the Pony Express exchange stations should take place, how many miles a horse can run before it has to be replaced, and a saddle even that would allow the rider to jump off one and get on the other. And each year they were working to make it faster to get mail from St. Louis to San Francisco. And at the same time, telegraph wires were going up overhead. And so in government and businesses, all of us, we face a risk at doing things the same way. That if we try and prepare Canby for today, then by the time we get through building whatever it is, a library, a road or something, it will be history. And so, to some extent, our job is impossible. We have to predict the future. The other thing that that just happened to me was the Clackamas County Commissioners appointed me to the Fair Board. And one of the questions that they wanted me to ask is, where will you, Greg Perez, where will you be spending your entertainment dollar in 5 years? Will it be any different than it is now?
Yes.
And what is that, and how do we monetize that desire? How do we monetize a desire that doesn't exist yet?
That you don't know what it is. So how are you going to develop it?
So that's.
But with good minds, it will bring the ideas with collaboration together and sort of figure out 5 or 10-year plan to where you can build something where people will come,
right?
It will draw, and you will make money.
If you're able to understand that the telegraph wires are being put up
and they're going to be gone,
instead of how do I make this pony run faster?
Exactly.
And we do that a lot. We get sucked in so much in city councils, policy-making boards, and that sort of thing, where people come to us and they say, there's a pothole in front of my house right now. What are you going to do about that? And I say, well, the city manager's going to figure out when and how to fix that. But the 6 city councilors and the mayor really have a job different from all 15,000 other citizens in this city, to stand on our tippy toes and look as far in the future as we can and say, where does the next I-205 need to be built? I was 30, I think, when 205 was being built. and I remember my brother and other people saying, they're wasting money. They're pouring all this concrete for I-205 and no one is ever going to use it. We don't have it now, there isn't a demand. Why should we be wasting our money? And in fact, a funnier one, Greg, is I was looking at old copies of the Canby Herald. And when Highway 99E was being rebuilt from 2 lanes, from a 2-lane highway to a 5-lane highway, 2 lanes and a middle turn thing.
Was it a waste of money again?
Oh, my Lord. There were letters to the editors saying that this is insane. That, first of all, you're taking away people's property and you're building road, you're putting all this cement down, and it's never going to reach capacity. So it's the story, it's the story we learned in kindergarten of the little red hen. Who's going to help me sow
Exactly.
my oats? And well, not now. I'm not hungry now.
Here's one thing I think they should have done with I-205. You know how the Bay Area, you have a lower and you have an upper.
Yeah.
They should have made that connection from I-5 to cross the Columbia with an upper deck only, with no turnoffs, going directly to Washington.
Sure, and they could have, and it would have increased the cost of that by a third, and there would have been the political lift of convincing people that we want to prepare for something that will be happening 60 years in advance. And having worked on the library project, I can tell you I had a difficulty with some people who were saying, why are you worried about what's going to happen 20 years from now?
It'll be outdated.
Why do you want to build a building that is engineered for the needs 20 years from now? And it's just like the old saying of somebody proposing a bridge across the river and saying, we don't need a bridge. Take a look. No one's driving over the river right now. There's no demand.
We created it. But the things in Canby that are happening, like the Dahlia Square, and in question the property at the other end of town, not to mention names, but it's up for sale now. The old restaurant.
Yes, all right.
It's up for sale now.
I think it's been for sale for some time.
Well,
but,
no, there's a new sign all the way up on
okay,
top.
well, that's great.
That's something new.
It would
but-
be, I do not like to see idle property.
No, I don't either. I mean, we've had some idle on Second that I think that if you would charge and space it out, the square footage, you could have 3 businesses in there.
Right, and that's the key to the problem of all downtowns across America, is that they were built before UPS and just-in-time delivery, that you had to have all of your stock on site.
Right.
And then suddenly, here we are today. You go to the UPS store and go down and see Warren. He has the tiniest possible footprint possible, because every square foot he has that isn't making money is money that's coming out of his profit.
Absolutely.
So I love downtowns. I want ours to prosper. I voted for and am helping to get a public-private partnership, the Dahlia, of putting 100 people downtown who can walk to businesses and services and not have to use cars, and have access to existing services of a pharmacy, of a library, of a park, of a grocery store, of a transit center. This is, for me, my prediction of the future is that both millennials and boomers who want to live in Canby will want to be able to walk to these places. So that's my little piece of the vision of predicting where the future is.
Okay. On another note, I want to backtrack once on this right here.
Yeah.
And I think it would be interesting for you to come back and for us to have a building contractor here. And the reason is he can explain why the houses cost so much. It all starts out with the price of the property. And then from there, it builds.
Right.
And then he would tell you, I've got to pay $130,000 for this permit, $250,000 for this, or whatever. And with all those costs put together and to build, then there's got to be a profit margin for him.
Right.
He's got to be able to make a little bit of money.
And we've done a couple of studies, and Canby is right in the middle of its permit. You list all the 309 cities in Oregon, and you put down how each of them has an inspection fee, certification
Right.
fee, that sort of thing. Canby is right smack dab in the middle. Cities that are at the top of that, who are charging a third more than Canby, have no problem with developers coming in and building houses.
You know-
So if you can make a profit building a building, and again, you know, this is the government stays out of this. This is the profit margin. And what's funny is to get into these arguments with people and saying, well, the greedy property owner. Well, it's their property, they took the risk buying it, and I'm not sure you want a government that says you can or can't use your property or sell it.
No. But the thought is you could build the row houses
Right.
and get more people.
Yes. You can increase density. And I've been pushing for that. And that's not universally beloved.
They've done it in Gresham.
Yes.
All over the place in Gresham.
I understand that. But the joke about Oregonians is that we hate two things. We hate sprawl and we hate density.
Welcome to America. That is funny. But you know, one of the things that Canby is growing into, and so is Oregon City, because all the growth over there is slowed down on the other side of I-5, pushing out.
With the exception of the famous Stafford Triangle,
Right.
the Oregon West Lynn is built out.
Right.
And so is Lake Oswego. You want to build a house in Lake Oswego, you have to buy another one, tear it down. There's no vacant lots
Right.
anymore.
So what we're seeing is what we saw in the Central Valley in California. We're seeing the same exact thing, to where they price themselves out, and those people will sell a home and buy 3 in the valley.
Correct.
And that's exactly what happened, because that's my hometown.
Yes.
And so they just inundated it with people from the Bay Area, and they commute every day to the Bay Area. And now they have 6 lanes going one way, 6 lanes coming back going the other way, when it used to be 2 lanes.
Right.
And then 4 lanes. So
And-
it's amazing. And BART doesn't go far enough into the valley.
Yes, and it's good that you bring up BART, because there are several strategies to address that, and there may even be things happening that we have none of us have any control over, that may be a game changer. That I am talking to more and more people, some who work for big corporations, who are working from home now, that they just aren't commuting. And then, of course, the idea is trying to build cities where you can walk to work, and people, you know, we've seen an explosion of this in Portland with the South Waterfront, with the Pearl District, where people who like to live in a city, and maybe you don't dig the density all the time, but you don't have to drive, you don't have to find parking, because
Exactly.
you can walk to 30 restaurants. And while I don't see that ever, while I don't want that happening to Canby, I do think it is my duty as an elected official to offer a variety of living arrangements, of housing, big houses, smaller houses, and rental units in different shapes and sizes, without us using taxpayers' money. The only way we can have things cost less is for the government to go in and interfere with the free market, for us to go in and buy some land and subsidize it so that the purchasing cost is less, or Section 8 housing where vouchers are provided to help subsidize.
That's when people don't work together.
And so, but so far no one has come to me and said, we want government to interfere with the free market. And so it gets back to the adage that you can't stop growth, but if you're wise, you can guide it. One of my political reporting mentors, Russell Sadler, used to say that Oregonians don't mind growth. They mind the effects of growth. That if you're in a community that's been designed for traffic and parks and amenities that can handle the growth, you don't feel the effects of growth. But if your commute is getting longer, if it's taking longer even at Fred Meyer or Cutsforth's, People have complained, saying that's my fault that I've allowed the city to grow, that they have to wait longer in grocery line.
Well, I think that's going to put the cap on it right there because I don't even want to touch it. So I want to thank you so much for coming today.
Been great
Greg.
talking with you, Greg. Anytime.
And I think we're going to get together again, and we're going to go into some other things deeper.
All right.
Because I truly believe that there's a lot of individuals, I can't speak for them, out there that want to say something, but they're afraid to speak out.
And that's why I tried to be especially crisp on some of my points.
Right.
That it does give people a chance to come and say, well, I don't want that, I don't like that, you're wrong. That I tried to make my points as clear as I can, that I don't think we can stop growth, that we can guide it. Now,
Right.
if you disagree with that, great, let's have that conversation and tell me the secret of stopping growth, and I'll go and do it. But in the meantime, I'm going to try and guide good growth, wise growth in this city.
Thank you so much.
You bet, Greg.
And thank you out there. This is Canby's Table Talk, and Greg, your host. We'll see you next time. Bye now.